A Map of Thought, Episode 20, Talcott Parsons. Here is why this one matters, even though almost nobody outside a sociology department has heard his name. Every time a management consultant draws a diagram of your company as a set of interlocking systems, every time a government report describes an institution as functioning or dysfunctional, as if it were a machine with moving parts, they are speaking a language Talcott Parsons built almost single-handedly. For roughly 3 decades, this one man defined what American sociology even was. Then, almost as suddenly as he rose, an entire generation of critics tore his framework apart. Both halves of that story are worth understanding.
Let us start with the framework itself. What did Parsons actually argue?
Structural functionalism, and the name sounds dry until you unpack it. Parsons treated a whole society the way a biologist treats a living body. Not a collection of random individuals doing whatever they like, but a system made of interdependent parts, each part performing some necessary function to keep the whole system alive and stable. The family, the economy, the legal system, religion, education, in his view, all exist because they each solve a specific problem the society as a whole needs solved. He built this into a framework he called AGIL, 4 letters, 4 basic problems every social system has to solve to survive. Adaptation, getting the resources you need from the environment. Goal attainment, deciding what you are actually trying to achieve and mobilizing to get there. Integration, keeping the different parts coordinated instead of pulling apart. And latency, sometimes called pattern maintenance, passing on the underlying values and motivation that keep people willing to play their part at all.
Give us something concrete, because 4 abstract letters can slide right past a listener.
Think about a human body. The lungs solve adaptation, pulling oxygen in from the outside environment. The brain and nervous system solve goal attainment, deciding what the body is actually trying to do and directing action toward it. The circulatory system solves integration, keeping every organ supplied and coordinated so nothing works in isolation. And something like your immune memory and your habits solve latency, maintaining the patterns that keep the whole body functioning the same reliable way day after day. Now try mapping that onto an actual company. The sales and supply chain teams handle adaptation, pulling in revenue and materials from the outside world. Leadership handles goal attainment, setting strategy and direction. Middle management and internal communication handle integration, keeping departments coordinated instead of working against each other. And company culture, onboarding, the stories people tell new hires, handles latency, passing down the values that keep everyone pulling in roughly the same direction.
That mapping is exactly what modern management consulting still does constantly, whether the consultants know Parsons' name or not.
Precisely, and that is the honest reason this dry-sounding 1950s sociology still matters. Systems thinking, the entire modern habit of drawing an organization as interlocking functional boxes with arrows between them, descends directly from this framework, even when nobody in the room has ever read a word Parsons wrote. And in post-war America, this framework was not just an academic theory. It became close to the dominant paradigm across the entire discipline of sociology, and Parsons himself, based at Harvard, held enormous institutional power over who got hired, published, and taken seriously in the field for roughly 3 decades, from the 1940s through the 1960s.
Why did it take hold so completely, at that particular moment in history?
Context matters enormously here. Post-war America, especially through the Cold War years, wanted a story about itself as a stable, well-functioning system, a working alternative to Soviet communism. A theory that described society as a smoothly integrated set of parts, each contributing to overall stability, fit that national mood extremely well. Some critics have argued, not unfairly, that structural functionalism quietly served as intellectual cover for the status quo, since if every existing institution is functional by definition, it becomes very hard to explain why anything should change.
And that is presumably where the backlash came from.
Exactly, and it landed hard, starting in the 1960s. Conflict theorists, feminist sociologists, and scholars working in the civil rights movement all pointed out the same basic problem from different angles. If you build a theory around everything existing because it serves some necessary function for stability, how do you explain persistent racial inequality, other than by implying, uncomfortably, that it too is somehow functional? How do you explain a woman confined to unpaid domestic labor for her entire life, other than by calling that arrangement functionally necessary for the family system? And how do you explain a genuine social revolution at all, when your whole framework is built around systems tending toward stability and equilibrium? The sociologist C. Wright Mills led some of the sharpest attacks, accusing Parsons of writing in a deliberately obscure, jargon-heavy style that dressed up a fairly conservative, status quo-defending vision of society in the language of neutral science. By the 1970s, Parsons' dominance had collapsed almost as fast as it had risen. An entire generation of sociologists built their careers on dismantling exactly the framework their teachers had been trained inside.
So is the whole framework simply wrong, then?
Not wrong so much as incomplete, and this is worth sitting with honestly rather than picking a side. Parsons' critics were right that his system struggled badly to explain conflict, power, and change from within. But the underlying insight, that institutions really do perform identifiable functions, and that pulling one thread out of a functioning system really does create ripple effects elsewhere, has never actually gone away. It just got absorbed into other frameworks, stripped of the conservative baggage, and quietly put back to work.
Where does this land in the world right now?
Right in the middle of a live argument people are having constantly about whether major institutions today are functioning or badly malfunctioning. Listen to how people talk about a national legislature that cannot pass a budget, or a court system with a growing backlog, or a company that keeps missing its own stated goals. The vocabulary people reach for almost automatically is functional versus dysfunctional, exactly Parsons' frame, even from people who would never call themselves structural functionalists. And the honest, useful question to borrow from him is not whether a given institution serves some interest, because almost everything does, but whose interest it actually serves, and whether the people it is failing have any real path to changing it. That second question is the one Parsons' own framework was worst at answering, and it is exactly the gap his critics forced open. Next time, we stay with institutions, but we shift disciplines entirely, from sociology into economics, and from a mid-20th century American theorist to a Nobel-winning economic historian who wanted to know something more specific. Not just what function institutions serve, but why some nations end up with institutions that make them rich, and others end up with institutions that trap them in poverty for generations. That is Douglas North, and his answer is going to give you a genuinely usable tool for thinking about national wealth.
See you then.